Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another stock market outlook video. And once again, we continue into new all-time highs on both the QQQ and the SPY. And interesting enough, you can see that last week, if we go to the sentiment survey that I posted on Twitter and actually bring that up real quick, you can see that only 39.5% of people thought we were going higher. And I pointed out in this post that anytime this survey goes below 45%, it's kind of a potential inflection point to the upside. So this is especially true down near the bottom in March, but you can see that this is the most bearish we've been in quite a while, and yet we're like 3% from all-time highs at this point, and this week we rallied once again. But anyway, we'll also cover the market indexes, the potential true market leaders, and then cover how my watches performed over this past week. And we had some excellent performances from XP, JMIA, TDOC, PLTR. So we'll go through all those different charts. We'll also talk about a few different sources of sentiment, the IBD Big Picture article, and also the Wishing Wealth GMI Signal. And if you enjoy my analysis at any time, please go ahead and leave a like down below. It really does help me out and my channel. And let's dive right in and start with the QQQ on a daily time frame. So this week started off nicely with a gap up and a kind of Matt Caruso kicker candle, where the previous day was a down day and also a close below the open. And then we gap up, kind of defying expectations here. And we had a really nice closing range. And this really set us up nicely for the rest of the week. And from this Tuesday, we went to Wednesday, where we also had a gap up, a move all the way down to the close and the high here. And then a very strong close above the upper Bollinger Band here. And then a continued move up on this Thursday, and then a nice inside day on Friday, bringing us back below this upper Bollinger Band right here. And one thing definitely worth mentioning is we are above this upper channel line here. So keep that in mind. We are a little bit short-term extended. And personally, I'm not really starting a bunch of new positions. I'm more managing what I currently own. So that is the QQQ on a daily time frame. And overall, if we go to a weekly chart, we are up 4.35% with a nice week closing range of 87.8% and a daily closing range on Friday of 40.6% for a very strong week. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a very strong stage 2 uptrend. And moving on to the SPY, let's go ahead and take a look at its week. It was up 1.91% with a week closing range of 74.8% and a daily closing range on Friday of 45.6%. The expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Moving on to the Russell 2000, the IWM, a nice upside reversal action here, although it didn't take out this low, but we had a nice move off these lows right here, and it was up 2.02% on the week with a week closing range of 84.8% and a daily closing range on Friday of 94.3%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher. We are in a stage 2 uptrend. Moving on, we've got GBTC, which is a representation of Bitcoin. And overall, we were down 12.43% as this continues to kind of base out here. But overall, we had a nice move off the lows, and it was on lower volume. So I would expect this to form a base and hopefully tighten up and present new buying opportunities. And overall, the weekly closing range was 36.2%. Daily closing range on Friday was 75.3%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or lower. You can see this is kind of an inside week and down movement. So that is Bitcoin. And moving on to Ethereum, it was actually up this past week, up 1.42% as it continues to build out its base. And overall, the weekly closing range, though, was only 19.8%. Daily closing range on Friday was 45.1%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or lower. And we actually are in the stage 2 uptrend because we just finished off the 10-week, where at this moment it's finding support. So moving on to the Dow Jones, the DIA, overall it was up 0.6% with a weekly closing range of 33.3% and a daily closing range on Friday of 45.6%. It is in a stage 2 uptrend, and the expectation from this bar is sideways or lower because of the kind of poor closing range, but this is pretty tight action kind of within this wick almost from the previous week. Next up, we've got the FFTY, the Innovator IBD 50 ETF, and this really reflects how a lot of growth stocks were performing this past week, up 4.59% with a week close range of 99.3% and a daily close range on Friday of 97.6%. The expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a nice stage 2 uptrend at this time. Next up, we've got GLD, which continues to base near its key moving averages. It was an up week of 1.62% with a week close range of 55.2% and a daily close range of 79.9%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we aren't yet in a stage 2 uptrend. Next up, we've got the VIX, which was slightly down 9.98% with a week close range of 31.1%. And lastly, we've got the XLF, which was down for the week, down 1.94% with a week close range of 14.3% and a daily closure range on Friday of 53.8%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or lower, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. So that pretty much covers the indexes. And I do also want to talk about the Webby RSI of the NASDAQ composite, and also talk about the 50-day check on the QQQ. So overall, you can see we're above this channel, and the Webby RSI is actually spiking higher than these previous spikes, which is kind of the highest point since the fall through day from the most recent correction. So as a bull market matures, you want to see the Webby RSI kind of find a rhythm in between the 0.5% and 2%. And right now it's a little bit more on the extended side up here near 3.2%. And from these bars here, the expectation might be that we consolidate a little bit, either pulling back to the 21 EMA based on time or based on price. So keep that in mind. We are a little bit extended on the Webby RSI. And also I want to talk about the 50-day check, and let's go to the QQQ. And overall, we're about 6.46% from that key moving average, which is a little bit up there, but you can see that during this prior run, we got all the way up to around 11.86%. But at this level, at about 7%, 8%, you can see a lot of kind of pullbacks happen in the QQQ. So keep this in mind again. If we continue to move up, this is something to watch out for. So that is kind of a wrap up of the market indexes. They're moving bullishly into all-time highs, but are potentially a little bit short-term extended at this moment. So moving on to the potential true market leaders, I always like to pull this out here and kind of get a kind of graphical view of how they're performing. And overall, if there's a lot of green checks going on and not a lot of red circles, just on a quick glance, that means that the market overall, based on the leaders, is relatively healthy. And we're seeing a lot of green check marks and only a few stocks below their 21 EMA, 50 SMAs, and experiencing downside reversals. So going through the charts, we'll start with XP, which was the best performer of this week. And you can see it moved up well from this pivot retest and then broke out into an all-time highs, both in terms of price and relative strength this past week. So it looks very strong, nice volume coming in on the breakout, and it looks very, very good, very strong closing range to end the week. Moving on, we've got FFTY, which continues to move up as well, trending above all those key moving averages, but definitely short-term extended at this moment. PLTR, you can see broke out of a nice VCP base here. And let me go over to this screen here where I've shown the 2-2 reversal pivot off the high of this bar. Then you've got some other pivots from these highs and the kind of standard VCP contraction pivot at this high at 28. So any of those would have been good entry points. And this really exploded up on huge volume after you can see the volume contracting within this base. And this looks very, very strong. And I would expect it to challenge all-time highs relatively soon. Next up, you've got AHCO, which also had a very strong week. Overall, it was up 18.39%, and you had a nice inside day here, and then a bullish outside day and oops reversal on this Friday. So it looks very, very good, trending above all those key moving averages as it makes new highs, both in terms of price and relative strength, as you can see from these histogram bars right here. Next up, we've got Fetch, which continues to build out this kind of shelf here above this anchored VWAP and also the 50 SMA. This could be actionable next week on a breakout into all-time highs above the kind of 65.50 level. Moving on, we've got EMPH, which is also forming out a shelf here. And you can see there's kind of some downward trend line breaks on this Thursday, and then nice inside day to end the week on Friday. NEO actually moved up well after retesting the pivot once again and had a really strong day on this Friday and is back above all those key moving averages. Not the greatest volume coming in, but overall the price move was very, very strong. Next up, we've got NET, which is continuing to build out its base and moved up off the 21 EMA this past week. And overall, not the greatest volume coming in here, but if it moves through this pivot on above average volume, I'll probably add to my existing position. Upwork continues to build out its base as well, and overall had a nice move, upside reversal on this Tuesday, and is above all those key moving averages right near all-time highs. Moving on, we've got Peloton, which continues to move sideways and form out kind of short-term base on top of this one. And you have a really nice upside reversal on this Tuesday. And this would have been a very good place to add at the close after this kind of confirmed move on higher volume. And then you had a nice day on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to end out the week above all those key moving averages. Moving on, we've got Snap, which continues to build out this base. And after being below the 21 EMA, retook it on this Wednesday and then pretty much went sideways after gapping up on this Thursday with a nice consolidation day, inside day on this Friday. Zillow continues to move up as well, bounce off the 21 EMA on this Tuesday, and then it moved up to all-time highs and pulled back and then had a decent close on this Friday. Melly continues to trend above all those key moving averages, looks strong. PGNY also above all those key moving averages. Really nice move on this Friday, then a gentle pullback, and then nice move once again on this Friday, the 22nd. PDD continues to move sideways below this pivot. TTD is still below the key 50 SMA, but is kind of acting well and moving up from this point right here. And I would expect it to base out a little bit more and then eventually challenge all-time highs if we see some volume coming through. Moving on, we've got ETHE, which is acting well right at all-time highs. Pins is above all those key moving averages as once again it tries to base out a little bit. SE pretty much just went sideways this past week, forming a flag pattern right near all-time highs. Zscaler moving sideways. Shop builds out a kind of short-term consolidation right at this prior longer-term double bottom pivot. So this definitely is potentially actionable if it breaks out above these highs right here. Moving on, we've got Tesla, which is getting very tight once again. And we've seen this pattern emerge time and time again in 2020. So we'll see if it can break out once again on volume. You had a nice oops reversal entry potentially on this Friday. Moving on, we've got Twilio, which is also forming a nice tight flag. Roku pulling back to end the week, but overall right near all-time highs. CrowdStrike consolidating, tightening up a little bit against this kind of 10 MA and 21 EMA area. MVCR tightening up as well against that key moving average. TSM right near all-time highs, but pulled back a little bit on this Friday with a gap down on above average volume. Corsair with a really nice bullish outside day on this Friday on a huge volume, and it really absorbed the secondary news very, very well. CELH continues to act well and trend above all those key moving averages. SQ pulled back to the 50 SMA area, but probably bounced off the 10-week, which is at around 220 or so, and you had a nice upside reversal action on this Friday. Next up, we've got GRWG, and overall this is building out a flag here and is pulling back on below average volume. And lastly, we've got Fiverr, which did pull back on this Tuesday, but now is finding a little bit of support near the 21 EMA area, although this drop was on pretty high volume. So that is a run through of the potential true market leaders. We definitely have some which are short-term extended. If we go to the 10-4 stochastic, you've got a couple above 85, 90, but you also have a decent amount that are in the 50s. So you do have some that are consolidating a little bit and potentially ready for another leg up. So that is a run through of those leaders. And now let's move on to my focus list. And overall, we had a very strong performance this week. If we sort by the weekly change, and let's get the focus list in here. XP up 30%, JMIA up 26%, PLTR 21%, apps 18%, TDOC up 15%, SI almost up 10%, and overall we only had 2 that were red on the week. So going through the charts, we already covered XP. JMIA had a nice VCP pivot at this level right here at about 48. Strong breakout on volume, and it was also a green line breakout because it took out the high from the IPO base all the way back in 2019. PLTR also had a VCP breakout as we already covered. Apps look strong. TDOC moved up well from this kind of short-term consolidation, and it was also a green line breakout this past Friday. SI, after its earnings report, which was up 147%, rallied about 20% this day alone, and then had a downward trendline break, and I started my position right about 69 on this day. Really strong volume coming in here. So next week, I'll be looking to add to my position if it presents a nice low risk entry near this all-time high. Moving on, we've got Fetch, which we already covered. Net, we already talked about. PDD, we already covered. IIPR continues to kind of grind higher. You have nice upside reversals on the past Friday and also on this Tuesday. AHCO, you can see it continues to move sideways below this level right here. So keep an eye on this one because NAAIM, TDOC, they've made some nice moves over the past few weeks. ZI actually tried on this day, ended up getting stopped out as it moved below this low on Thursday, but it is pulling back on below average volume back to the key moving averages. So this could just be another contraction within a VCP type move. And lastly, we've got TENB, which is still forming out its flag here. He had a nice move potentially on Tuesday, but did squat a little bit and then it kind of faded the rest of the week and is now pulling back to the 21 EMA area. So overall, very strong week from my watch list, a bunch over 15% and some good performances in here as well. So moving on to sentiment, you can see that this week the survey reading is at 46%, which is definitely a step up from 39.5%. But given the moves in growth stocks that we saw, honestly, this isn't too high in my view. But moving over to the NAAIM exposure index, you can see that this level is very extended at 112.93, which is definitely the highest we've seen in a while, going back all the way to 2019. So keep that in mind. This is a very extreme level historically. Moving on to the bulls versus bears poll, you can see that this is actually pulling back this past week down to 60, but it remains pretty elevated. And last of the sentiment indicators, the put call ratio, it's going back down actually, but it's been at this level for quite a while now, so keep that in mind. Moving on to the IBD Big Picture article, the headline is Stock Market Ends Mixed as S&P 500 Suffers Mild Distribution, Corsair, Unity Software Score Bullish Gains. And they discuss how on Friday we did have the potential for a pretty negative day, but the NASDAQ composite reversed higher, and we saw a lot of upside reversals in the growth stocks. They discussed the strong action from Corsair, Unity Software, so kind of gaming related stocks. They also discussed GameStop, which has been going pretty crazy over the past couple sessions because of short squeezes and Reddit pumps. Not my type of trade. It's hard to define risk there, but that definitely is sometimes just interesting to watch on your screen. They discuss how the FFTY is outperforming. Overall market health, they talk about how the bullish sentiment remains at extreme levels, as we saw, but there isn't really any meaningful signs of distribution. And a lot of the distribution days have actually gotten knocked off, especially off the NASDAQ. They discuss JD, Apple, Microsoft, Now, and Tesla. And these stocks right here are announcing their earnings this upcoming week. So definitely some big cap names here that could kind of shift sentiment a little bit and the overall direction of tech in the market. So overall, their current outlook is a confirmed uptrend, and we now have 5 distribution days on the S&P 500. And rounding things off with the GMI Signal, it is still green since November 5th, and we now have a score of 6 out of 6 from this last Friday. So overall, my current view is a confirmed uptrend. As we saw from these indicators right here, sentiment is very, very bullish on the extreme end, and that was also mentioned in the IBD Big Picture article. However, the market leaders are acting well. Price action of the indexes themselves is strong, and at this time, I'm unlikely to really start completely new positions, but I'm more in the mindset of managing what I currently own and potentially adding to those if they present good opportunities. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in future videos.